In this episode, I'm joined by Steve Phifer, Executive Vice President at Rodgers Builders. We talked about his journey from the field to the boardroom, the importance of staying connected to the job site, and what he's still learning about leadership after decades in the industry. Steve shares how moments of doubt have shaped his growth and why listening, humility, and trusting your team are key to doing well. Let's get into it. Steve, thanks for joining us on the CPC podcast. It's great to have you on.
Glad to be here.
Really appreciate you coming on. Been looking forward to having a conversation with you specifically because as a recruiter in construction, the healthcare market's extremely busy. So getting your insights into this will be great. We'll kind of fire some questions across because there's a number of things I'd kind of love to get your perspective on. So we'll kind of jump straight in if you don't mind.
Sure.
You've obviously spent, was it 38 years at Rodgers, which is, no small feat for any one person. What was it that kind of first drew you into construction?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I enjoyed making things and building things. Anytime I was ever bored and looking for something to do, I was always putting something together or taking something apart or building something. And I also enjoyed watching construction projects when I was a kid. Two of the most vivid memories I have from being a child is when they tore up the road in front of our house and repaved it. And then somebody was building an addition down the street, and I, hung out with the carpenters. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old and just would sit in the yard and watch them work. So I was just always drawn to it.
So it's more like almost like a passion for you that you feel that it's funny, isn't it? Because I speak to people on the podcast and we have these conversations, and I've heard from another podcast, and it's are you the driver of the car, or are you being driven? And, I think sometimes when it's a passion, you're kind of pulled to it and it's something that kind of just takes you over. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're 40 years, as I said, at one particular business. I mean, what's the secret to success of staying with one business? Because as a recruitment consultant, it is an absolute rarity to see anybody last longer than sort of 5 or 10 years these days. But for you having, I would guess, pretty much your whole career there.
Yeah, and actually about 30% of the employees here have been here, I think, 20 plus years. So it's kind of the culture around here. And I grew up in the age of, my dad worked at the same place from the time I was born until he retired. So it's just, I guess, maybe in my DNA. I actually worked for another company before Rodgers for about 6 years before I came to work at Rodgers, another construction company. And I probably would have stayed there, except that this was a guy that had decided to just get out of the business and really dial things back. So he said, you can stay here as long as you want, but pretty soon I'm not going to be able to pay you. So you probably ought to go start looking for another job. And I had a friend of mine that worked at Rodgers, and also our insurance agent at the company I worked with before was the insurance agent for Rodgers, and he connected me with Pat and BD Rodgers, and that's how I came to be here.
I mean, that's crazy. I think spending that long kind of with one particular business is incredible. And like you say, certainly a testament to yourself, and something where, it's probably instilled in you from your parents as to, having that kind of commitment to a specific job and task. But look, you said there's 30% of the workforce that are there. Is there something specific within Rodgers you feel that kind of, keeps that culture of people, keeping things fresh in the business and stuff as to why you remain?
It's, I just really enjoy all the people I work with. Construction is an extremely tough and demanding business. It takes a lot of hours, and you're here with people more than you're, with your families. And so you better like the people you're working with. And it's going to be that way anywhere you go. So the fact that I just really enjoy all the people I'm working with here. And I've had the pleasure of developing a lot of young talent. A lot of the guys that I'm working with and women that I'm working with have been here since they got out of school. So they're kind of like my children, and you don't want to leave them.
Well, look, I mean, there you go. I think it's like you say, the culture of the business is obviously set by the leadership as to having that commitment to one business. But you're right in saying that, it's about the people, because all businesses are, and I think sometimes that can be overlooked, right? And it's, if you build the team around you, it almost becomes quite easy to stay at one job, because there's that commitment to the people that you work with. And is that a fundamental part of your role, Steve, as you've kind of progressed through the business to kind of nurture that next wave of talent coming through?
That's right. I started out here as a project manager estimator, and we were about a $35 million a year company then. And now we're, we may get above 800 million this year. So we've grown quite a bit. We've gone through cycles with the economy, but yeah, we've grown tremendously since I started. And a lot of the people that have helped us grow like that are people that I've hired and have worked with me. So I'm extremely proud of all of them.
And what's the kind of challenges that you've faced over the years, Steve, of, going from a business that's 35 million, which, look, in the grand schemes of things in the US is a relatively kind of small business, to get to a size where, a GC of 800 million. What are the changes, and what have been the kind of really difficult patches of that transition? Because there's a lot of different kind of, I guess, transitions that the business would have gone through, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are those challenges you think to kind of that you've faced in kind of each step getting closer to where you're at now?
Well, when I started here, we were a traditional general contractor, and that we self-performed a lot of work. And that's what I was used to doing with my previous employer. We self-performed even more at the other company that I worked with. And we transitioned more into a construction manager as we started to chase larger projects. And primarily those large projects were healthcare. And when I was much younger, I wanted to be, and still now, wanted to be a part of the biggest, the toughest projects that we had going. And those happened to be healthcare. And so I got really involved in them and became, just started to love doing healthcare work. And we were competing. We were the small hometown contractor that, was known for, to do good quality work and to work on very complex projects. But the projects kept getting larger and larger. And one of the biggest challenges we had was convincing our owners that we were, capable of doing the large projects. They would, one client would use us over and over again on the toughest, most difficult, small interior renovations they had inside the hospital, but, a nice, clean job on the outside. They would say, "Oh, y'all are too small for that." So we had to overcome those challenges of competing with big national companies that were much larger than us. And even now, to be almost $1 billion a year company, that's just kind of medium size anymore.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah, some of the tier one contractors, such like 14, 15 billion I've seen, some of them, Turner, etc. There's some very, very large beasts out there, and it's,
Yeah.
how you manage a business of that size is crazy. I mean, 800 million is large. I think that the largest general contractor in the UK is probably about 5 or 6 billion, and they're a monster, right? And it's funny in the US that, that kind of mid tier is about $1 billion, and it's, that's no small feat. You mentioned there, Steve, about the focus on healthcare, and, that's obviously been a real kind of prominent area of your career. What makes the kind of healthcare sector and the projects that you do different from the other sectors, and what kind of unique challenges come with building in healthcare?
I always tell everybody that healthcare is a calling, and you have to really love it to want to do it, because you're working in, most of the healthcare projects are on existing campuses that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that gives you all kinds of different challenges into how you accomplish the work that you're supposed to do. And I just really like working with the people. And it seems like it doesn't seem like it. It is it's a special building. It's most of them are 100-year buildings. They're going to be there for a long time, and you may have a family member, or you yourself might end up in one of those facilities, and you want everything to be right. Um, there was one healthcare administrator that the way he got his point across about making sure you do everything right on a healthcare project was, he said, how would you feel if the person you loved the most was hurt or injured or even worse because of something you did or didn't do? And that's something that we have to think about every day in what we're doing on these healthcare campuses. And I mean, it just takes a special kind of person to want to do that. And like I said earlier, construction is a tough business. You pile on all those constraints of an operating campus, and it's even tougher. So I just love it. I just really.
I was going to say you must.
I can't imagine doing anything else.
I mean, operating as a contractor and a construction manager in a live environment, in like you say, in a facility where it's, you've got a lot of sick people, right? And it's a very important campus and building where, they're doing some extremely important work. What do you find are the kind of real challenges of working in a live environment in comparison to, let's say, for instance, building a brand new hospital facility in a space where there's no patients, etc., against where you're in a live environment, maybe doing some large extensions or whatnot to a hospital?
Well, you have to be very flexible. Our folks go into work every day with a plan of what they're going to get accomplished that day. And if something they're doing is too loud or causes vibrations, somebody may come to our site and tell us we got to stop. And then we're just down for an hour or so until they're finished with the procedure they're doing, on the other side of the wall from us, or, you just never know what's going to happen. So, schedule is something that, you want to have a good plan. You want to know what you're planning to do and the work that you've got to get accomplished, but you've got to be flexible and figure out ways to work around those kinds of delays that you're going to have on a healthcare project, because nothing ever goes according to plan. Versus if you're building, and I've had the pleasure of building some ground up hospitals, out in the middle of a 30 or 40 acre field where nobody's in your way but yourself. So it's very different. We have to be almost invisible, or stealth when we're doing our work inside a hospital. I can give you an example. We did a major renovation at a hospital here in Charlotte. This was maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And, and we were all over the hospital working, and I actually had to have a procedure in that hospital while all that was going on. And so the nurse was prepping.
You were the contractor on site, and you have a procedure in the hospital.
Right.
Was it emergency, or was it kind of?
No, it wasn't emergency. It was a minor thing, but I was in the hospital, and the nurse was prepping me, and she was asking me questions, about what I did and who I worked for and all that. And I told her, I said, well, I work for Rodgers, thinking that she's going to know who I am. And she says, oh, okay, that's nice. What do y'all do? And I said, well, we're a building constructor, and I oversee all the healthcare work. And I said, we're doing all the work here at the hospital. I didn't know any work was going on at the hospital. And this was a major project. It was a $30 or $40 million renovation project 10 years ago, when $30 or $40 million was a lot of money. So that's kind of the best compliment you can get, is that nobody knows you're there.
That's amazing. Wow, a 30-40 million pound renovation, and the dollar, sorry, and she doesn't even know that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's wow. Fair play to you guys. I think that's unbelievable. Is it fair to say, Steve, that you're a bit of a pressure junkie, because doing projects after projects in healthcare where like you say, the construction schedule and timescales, wow, they must get hammered. It must be so stressful at times, right? Managing a construction program it's going to be inundated with stoppages and issues. How do you manage that?
You have to have a good plan. You have to have really good people that are really smart, and and they have to want to please, because it can be very aggravating to if you're just all about getting the work done, not necessarily about taking care of the client. It's not going to work out too well. You're just not going to enjoy this type of work.
You've obviously overseen some major expansions and some really high profile healthcare projects, right? Can you take us behind the scenes of one that really kind of tested your leadership or really stretched the thinking of the team?
The first one that comes to mind is we had built a vertical expansion on top of an existing facility at the coast of North Carolina, and that's a difficult challenge in and of itself, because you're going on top of and this was a surgery center that we were on top of, and we were adding beds on top of the hospital. And so you got to punch holes in the roof, you got to extend stairs up, you got to extend elevators up. So you're opening up the roof of the hospital, and the last thing you want in there is water. So that made it difficult. We were about, but the project had been very successful. We were about, 95% complete. And Hurricane Florence hit. And the roof on the new addition was tipped in certain areas, and it failed. And so water got into the building, and Hurricane Florence, you're probably not familiar with it, but it was only a Category 1 storm. It wasn't the wind that was a problem. It was the rain. It rained about 3 feet over the weekend. So we got a tremendous amount of rain. Water got into the building, and it wiped out the upper floor, and then it flowed on down. And so long story short, it trashed the whole inside of the addition that our folks had just finished. So we had to rebuild it, basically start over, take the building, demo it down to the exterior skin and the structure, and build it all back. And just the mindset that you have to get into, you finish a project, or just about finished with a project, and you're looking forward to your next project, and then you find out you're going to have to do the same thing all over again, and that's really challenging. Then you add to the mix an insurance company, because it became a builder's risk claim. And a friend of mine told me, who was also in the industry, I'd never been through a major builder's risk claim before. And I was asking him about it, and he said, the problem with them is that you're going to get sideways with your owner and the insurance company, and you're going to have a ruined relationship. And that worried me more than anything, because this was one of our very best clients on the coast. And, that was extremely important to us and our office down there to make sure we maintained that relationship. And so it took a lot of effort, planning. You got to keep the insurance company happy to make sure that they don't think you're spending too much money rebuilding the building. You got to keep the client happy that they're making sure they get what they deserve. And that was a big challenge. But our team did a tremendous job. I'm based in Charlotte. I spent a couple of months down there after the storm, helping them get organized to do the rebuild. And it went off, almost perfectly. The client still loves us. We're still working down there, and just about everybody that was a part of that team is still with us too. So
that's amazing.
It turned out really, really well.
That is amazing, because managing all of those expectations, when the kind of image that came to mind there, where you said you had to knock that down, is that same. I've got 3 young boys. You might hear them kicking around in a bit, but it is one of them builds something with Lego, and the other one knocks it down, and the look of horror on their face.
That's a good analogy.
As a father, you've got to sit there saying to him, "It's okay, buddy. We'll build it again."
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth you kind of managed to do that with a?
Yeah, it was a real kick in the gut. I don't. The storm hit on a Friday and ran the whole weekend. We got organized with a team to go down on Monday. We just barely made it down there before the town became an island, because water was rising from all the rivers and runoff from the storm. we got into town, and I thought I was prepared for what I was going to see, and I wasn't. It was the worst thing that I had ever been through. Um, and you know, I knew that, the next weekend I would probably be coming back to Charlotte, and all of those folks, they were there working on that project when we had some people that stayed in the building through the storm, not knowing what was going on with their families or their homes in the same area. And so then the next week where they're working and they're trying to manage getting repairs done at their houses while at the same time keeping this project going. So I can't say enough about our team and the dedication that they had. Uh, it's just amazing to me.
I mean, you mentioned this, Steve, previously about, having an amazing team, and that buildings like hospitals don't get done without people that really have that passion and stuff and that commitment to it. And I don't think, you can, look, certainly not having ever gone through anything of that nature personally, I think it's really difficult to comprehend, right? That your family potentially in danger, your whole life's work as such, and your home could potentially be destroyed.
That's right.
But that commitment to actually getting done where do you find these people? I'm a recruitment consultant with GC clients who are looking for healthcare people. So if you've got a tap on where you can find people that are that Steve Harvey,
they're extremely hard to find. That's probably been the governor on our growth is we're very particular about the people that we hire, and we don't usually we won't chase work if we don't have a core team that's available to do the work, because you got to have the right people. And if you go out and chase work without the right people, you're going to ruin your reputation.
Yeah, I mean, construction is a people's business as much as it's bricks and mortar. It's about having the people there to deliver what you promise and the relationship. So kind of touching on that, on the recruitment aspect, how do you kind of go about that then? Look, healthcare is a specialism, right? And, as I said, that we work with a number of GCs across the states that operate specifically in healthcare, and finding people in that space is difficult anyway, let alone people of clearly the nature that you guys are looking for. What have been some of the real kind of core challenges that you found in recruiting people?
Probably the biggest challenge is travel. Um, Typically in construction, you have to go where the work is. We're fortunate that in the Southeast, for my entire career, there's been a tremendous amount of work in this area, but you still, it can't always be within an hour or so of your house. And it's difficult for people with families, especially young children, to be able to commute, only be home on the weekends. And healthcare especially, there's not always a tremendous amount of healthcare work going on in your hometown. So you may have to travel across the state or into the next state to do the job, and finding people that can do that on a fairly regular basis is difficult. I think the finding people that want to take on the challenge of keeping the client happy, when you're basically working in their house, that's takes a different kind of person, and it's we don't have a secret to finding them. It's just it's extremely difficult.
It is. It's a real challenge, isn't it, of finding people? And look, certainly when businesses have got a certain expectation of people, and in an environment like you say, rightfully in healthcare, where if you live in a specific town and the hospital's just had a major refurb, well, guess what? A 100-year building, as you rightfully said, it's not likely to have money spent on it for a significant amount of time unless there's emergency upgrades. But having to travel across state lines and stuff, it is difficult. Something that we found that we've had to do a lot of is relocate people. Which is always a difficulty. But like you say, these people don't necessarily grow on trees as such. It's about unearthing the right people and making sure that, like you say, not stretching yourself too thin to where you're kind of having to kind of sacrifice and bring on people with a certain ilk that you don't want in your business.
Yeah. And that's what we've opened regional offices to help with that. So, our corporate headquarters is here in Charlotte. We have a regional office in Raleigh, a regional office in Wilmington, a regional office in Charleston, South Carolina, a regional office in Greenville, South Carolina. And we try not to ever have anybody driving more than an hour, 15 minutes, one way from their home to their job. So we pretty much work in and around those areas where we have regional offices. But even then, like right now, South Carolina is really booming, especially in healthcare. And we may need some people to relocate from North Carolina to South Carolina, and that'll be a difficult decision for a lot of people. If they really want to do that or not, pick up their family and move. You got kids that maybe are in high school, and they want to finish where they're at with all their friends, or you've got young children that or they depend on relatives close by for daycare. There's all kinds of challenges associated with it.
Yeah, no, it's extremely difficult, and you obviously got your finger right on the pulse to ensure that managing the team effectively, and having done it for 40 years, all through different transitions. I think I'll be speaking to you after this to get some tips. I mean, look, I think it's fair to say that you're known for building trust with your clients, and certainly with the teams that you kind of put together. But what does that look like in practice, especially on kind of long, complex builds?
It's basically doing what you say you're going to do. If you show up every day and you've got a plan, and you try to execute that plan and live up to your commitments, owners appreciate that. That's the other thing about why I like healthcare so much, is that the clients understand and appreciate somebody who's willing to work hard through difficult situations, and they know they don't have total control of everything that's always going to happen. So they're understanding if mistakes are made, but they expect you to do something about it if something happens. It's not so much that you made a mistake, it's how you react to the mistake. But the best advice I could give anyone to earn trust is to just do what you say you're going to do, and always have a plan and show up.
I think, like you said, there, it's fundamental human basics, right? Of as the old saying, "I'm a man of my word" type of situation, and I think it's fundamental. I think that to build trust is that you do have to show up, and it's the difference between managing and leadership, right? Where managers dictate and tell, leaders do and show up and show the way. And I think that it's probably the one difficult skill, I think, that people kind of, they tread that thin line between management and leadership. And specifically, like you say, in healthcare, when it's a very, very difficult kind of project, right, where you're going to be, stress levels are going to be crazy. I mean, and you're at Rodgers, you obviously build quite diverse and high performing teams, clearly, right, in order to what you do. What would you say you're kind of most proud of when it comes to the culture that you've kind of helped shape from the off?
I may have said it earlier. I think I'm most proud of the people that have stayed with us for, I've been here almost 38 years. I've got people that I hired that have been here, 20 and 30 years themselves. So I'm proud of that longevity, and that they feel the same way about the company and the work that we do as I do. So that makes me very proud.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's fundamental, right? I think Something that kind of come to mind is, obviously, look, building teams is difficult in healthcare at the best of times, and certainly with the lack of talent that's in there. Obviously, if somebody kind of new joins Rodgers and joins your team, what do they hope to learn or feel within their first couple of months? Certainly on a project team to feel part of that. And what is it you guys do to really make them feel part of that team?
I think the first thing is they have to know that we truly care about them and their families. We want to keep them safe. We want them to have as much work-life, home-life balance as you can, or at least get the opportunity to rebalance when you get out of whack. But we want everybody to grow as much as they want to grow. The higher up you move in an organization or an industry, it takes more sacrifice, and not everybody wants to do that. But we're here to help everyone grow as much as they want to grow, and encourage them to have that growth.
Yeah, and I think it's massively important, isn't it? Certainly when you bring people on to, expose them to that culture, and certainly from people that have been there for as long as you guys have, and what clearly is most of the team have got that longevity. And I think that kind of does build that trust quite quickly, right? And that you've got somebody's back, because it's not always the case in construction, unfortunately, where people tend to get thrown under the bus for mistakes by leadership quite quickly. And I guess that's why my industry exists, right? Is that people aren't as lucky to have employers like yourself, Steve, where you're clearly looking out for your people and making sure that they are part of that.
Well, I think I always had that too as I was coming up. Is I knew whatever commitment I made to the client that I was working for, that if I needed support, I was going to get that from the people that I worked for.
And do you feel that's kind of what shapes Rodgers and what's kind of helps Rodgers stand out from the competition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about our reputation here, and we're not out to we want to make a fair fee on our work, but more important to us than that is we want that client to want us to be back on their next project. We don't, if we just come out okay on this project and we get a chance to do another project, then that's what's made it worth it. And probably 80% of our work is repeat clients. That's across all the market segments that we work in. And I think that says a lot about the company.
I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of client retention rates in construction. I could have a guess, but would you suggest, it sounds high, would you suggest that's quite high in construction? Because I can imagine it certainly is, given the challenges and stuff I hear about.
Yeah, I think it is. Another statistic about us and healthcare is, we're ranked nationally. I think we're just outside of the top 10 this year. We're like maybe ranked 12th nationally, but all of our work is in North and South Carolina, and so we're being measured against a lot of companies that are 3 times, 4 times, 5 times our size, and work all over the United States. So there's no doubt that we do more healthcare work in North and South Carolina than any of our competition does.
Well, that's incredible, isn't it? When you think about stats like that, which clearly shows the reputation that you guys have for delivering the work that you deliver. Because you don't get repeat clients in construction. It's a very fickle industry that, excuse my language, but if you ball something up, you're out the door, right? That's it.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
I always say to people when we're training them, you're trying to bring on a new client, you don't get second chances.
Well, and they all talk to each other. They all, they meet in organizations and they share stories about their experiences with different people. And if you mess up with one client, you probably messed up with 4 or 5 others that they're talking to.
Yeah, I say that all the time. It's like there's a saying I was once told: if you have a really nice meal in a restaurant, you'll tell like one of your friends, "Oh, we go there. It's a great place." If you have a terrible meal, you're shouting it out. You're going to tell 10. You're going to tell as many people as you can. Don't go there. It's terrible. The service is crap. The food's crap. So it's that same, and people do talk. People talk construction's a large but very small industry at the same time.
That's exactly right.
I mean, what's your approach to kind of managing risk on your projects? Because I guess managing risk against, maintaining client confidence is quite tricky, right?
Mhm.
How do you go about that? Because it's
So the biggest thing is to do your homework and be prepared. That's our founder, BD Rodgers. You know, preached that. That's the reason he got into the business, was because he thought he could. He was a engineer with a architectural engineering firm, and he got frustrated with the performance of the contractors he was working with. So 60 plus years ago, he cashed in a life insurance policy and started his own business because he felt like he could do it better than anybody else. And that that culture is instilled in all of us. And we try to pass that along to everybody that we work with, is that we want to be better than everybody else. And so to be better, you have to have a good plan, and you have to have a good budget. You have to think about everything that could potentially happen to you. One of the tools we use on our projects is we actually create a risk register for every healthcare project that we do, and list out all the things that we think can go wrong on the project, and plan for it if that were to happen, or plan ways to avoid that from happening. Um, so it's all in the planning. Um, it's just all in the, you got to have a good plan.
well, I guess I always say to my team, 6 P's, the prior planning prevents piss poor performance, right? And it's just
Yeah.
the way it works. And I think it's fundamental in any construction project, but healthcare, wow, that extra layer of risk and complexity is probably unmatched in anything else. You look at like laboratories and stuff like that, great, yeah, but you're working in a live environment with people. It's extremely difficult. I mean,
The, the
over
other thing, the
sorry.
other thing I want to mention that we do is we have a process called a reality check that we started doing about, gosh, it may be 20 years ago now. We're quarterly on all of our large projects. We'll have a reality check. It might take 3, 4 hours to get through it, but we go in and look at all the key components of a project, and look at, we've got key indicators that we look at, as far as, outstanding RFIs, outstanding submittals, change orders, looking at financials, looking at the schedule. And it's not always, it can, it's not always a fun meeting, but it's our job to go in and try to ask questions and find things that we're not planning on, or that maybe the team, you get so deep into it you can't see the forest for the trees, and so there might be something circling out there that could be a problem for you and you're just not seeing it. And so it's my job, when I come in to do the reality check, is to try to make sure the team is planning for all those things that could happen. And that's been something that's developed through the years, and has become quite beneficial to us, I believe.
And is it something that you find is like an ever evolving kind of plan? Because obviously, hospitals have become more and more complex over the years, right? I mean, when did you first do your first ever healthcare project?
I started at Rodgers in 1987, and I did my first healthcare project in 1988. It was an emergency department renovation at one of the hospital campuses here in Charlotte.
I mean, and you think about like the complexities of a hospital from 1988 to now, right? I don't know if they used to kind of keep oxygen supplies on site like they do nowadays with those massive containers and stuff that are a massive fire risk. I'm not sure if that was always the case back in the 80s, and the way that buildings are built nowadays, and hospitals specifically, with all the tubing through the pipe work and stuff into specific rooms.
The
It must be.
technology is really driving the vast majority of that change. I mean, they're like, it's almost like we're building a very large computer, because there's so much like low voltage wiring and just technology built into the buildings to make them digital. It wasn't like that when I first started. They were complex, but it wasn't. It's even more complex now because of all the systems and all the technology.
I mean, naturally, look, the US has got the healthcare there is certainly in the size of an industry is exceptional. The amount of money that's spent in it. What's the most complex kind of projects that you've done in that aspect where you're looking at the plans and going, wow, there's probably, in terms of the high technology and stuff, is there ever been a project that you look at and just go, shit, where do we start?
I think the vertical expansions are probably the ones that are most difficult. We have a team that just finished a project in Fayetteville that was a vertical expansion that was very complex, and we were right over the emergency department entrance. So while we're building up above the emergency department, we've got to keep the doors open and the ambulance drive open for the emergency department. And I'm real proud of the team there and the plan that they came up with on how to build that project. Another project that we're starting to turn over areas right now that's extremely difficult as well is it's a hospital, and we're basically doubling the size, more than doubling the size of the hospital by building all around it and on top of it. So we're building on 5 sides of the hospital.
Whilst it's live?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the team has just done an amazing job on that project. That's probably the most difficult one that I've ever seen. It had, when I first started, it wasn't unusual to go, build a bump out on one side or maybe do one small vertical expansion, but you were just right there and you were in an area that, wasn't so well traveled or used by patients and staff. But this project, we're touching everything on that facility. So we're building a hospital on top of a hospital, basically.
Now that sounds wow. I mean, I take it it's in multi phases, right?
Yes. But it's all, it's all going on at one time. It's multi-phase turnovers, but it was one big phase.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was some enabling work to get some things out of the way so we could go to work. But then once it started, we were building all around it and on top at the same time.
Do you know what? I'd love to see that. I've seen some complicated construction sites in my time, but that would, wow, in a hospital on 5 sides, that is some going, because it's one of those things that I can't even envisage that in my mind as to how a hospital still is actually running with a construction site all over it.
Yeah, we're punching holes all in it, all the way around it, and it's at the coast as well, and so it's in a hurricane prone area. I think I was down there just day before yesterday, and they had 3 inches of rain over the weekend. It was just a normal thing. So it's.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I've been to North and South Carolina, and I've never. You guys have some biblical stuff come there, and I wasn't even there in a major storm or a hurricane or anything like that. Even just as I was driving through, I think we were coming from Georgia up to South Carolina, and we hit this storm, and my wife was like, "You need to pull over," because it was basically like somebody pouring a bucket over the windscreen. Wipers are going. Yeah. And I pulled over, managed to kind of go off to the side of the road, and I opened up, and it was so much rain, it was insane, and and it lasted for probably 20 minutes, and then it cleared, and that was it. Yeah. And I was like, tropical storms.
That's it.
It's incredible. It's incredible, and to do that, wow, it almost blows my mind, to be honest. That you 5 sides of a hospital in a hurricane-prone area with 3 inches of, wow. I'm always going to have to jump on a plane and just go and visit it, to be fair, just to have a look. That's
Well, come
insane.
on, we might put you to work.
Yeah, yeah, bucketing water out. I think that's about as useful as I might be to you, to be honest. But I think, I think, look, construction has obviously changed drastically over the years, right? And healthcare projects, like you say, are complex anyway. The design aspects of it, I can imagine you've probably seen change really, really heavily, right? With
Mhm.
technological advancements. Are you seeing that AI is going to be a massive change for you guys and to really help solve some of the complex issues that you see on healthcare projects?
Um, I don't know so much about AI as I do from a technology standpoint. Prefabrication has been one of the biggest things that has impacted us so far. And those projects that I was just describing, the vertical expansion over the emergency department, and then this project we're building five sides, we did a lot of prefabricated exterior wall panels, and that both of those projects would have been next to impossible to do if we'd have had to have 100 masons out there working around the building up on scaffolding, laying brick. So we built panels with brick on them, brought them and set them into place, and that's prefab is really the biggest change that I've seen in the industry that's making things better. It's moving more of the work offsite into factory settings where it's easier to find trade people that want to work in those conditions versus out in the field up on scaffold or on a ladder in weird awkward positions putting work in place.
Yeah, and I think there's I can't imagine it's too large, but the modular kind of buildings, do they affect the way that you kind of do stuff on hospitals? Do you have much modular on that you, I guess, propping in and dropping in certain types
Yeah.
of?
Yeah, we're doing more and more of that. Central energy, all these the hospital facilities will have a central energy plant, and several of those have been modular construction where they're built completely off-site, brought in and stitched together. We just finished a freestanding emergency department that was totally modular. We put, you site adapted, put the foundations in, and then they bring in the Uber pods or what they're called, and then we stitch them together and flip on a switch and turn everything on. And it's ready to go. So yeah, we're doing a lot of that, a lot more of that.
I was going to say I've seen a lot of reports suggesting that that's going to be well, it still is a real emerging kind of market within construction. Is that something that you can see not necessarily taking over because there's always going to be complexity
Yeah.
to any project that you can't do modular, but China, for instance, we've seen hotels and stuff go up in a day with modular just straight out of the ground. I mean, are you seeing that's going to be a massive change and a driver within construction over the next few years?
I think it may take more than a few years, but I think it's definitely going to change the industry um, because it's so hard. I mean, probably you know it's hard for us to find management people to work for us. It's even harder to find qualified tradespeople. Most of the electricians, plumbers, mechanics, they're all aging out, and trades isn't something that's pushed into the school system that much anymore. When I was coming through school, I took a shop class in the seventh grade and a trades class in the eighth grade, and I got introduced to construction more then. A lot of areas don't do that right now. So we have to figure out ways to make the work more attractive to the people that do want to work with their hands. Um, so I think that's gonna help us attract people to the industry. But I think there's all buildings. There's still going to be a lot of one-off type construction that's not necessarily um, works for prefabrication or modular. But I think prefabrication, where you build components of the building and bring it out on site and set it into place, is definitely going to be something that has to happen. It's especially important on a healthcare campus. I have one project now that one of our biggest challenges was where are all the workers going to park as we're building this really large addition on a healthcare campus. So you try to push as much work as you can offsite and limit the number of people that actually impact the campus where there's the existing hospital.
Do you know what, that's something I didn't even think about. Of course, yeah. On a live site, a hospital busy at the best of times, right? And I think parking at hospitals is a global problem. I think in the UK it's chaos, and I'm sure it's the same in the US. That yeah, wow, yeah, that is a problem. And like you say, I guess the technological advancements for modular and offsite prefab is probably going to continue to rise, right? As
Uh,
to have that kind of issue. A question I was going to ask is that you've obviously been in a leadership position for a long time, and you've mentored a lot of younger people coming through. What would you suggest is some of the qualities that you see that you would expect to see or want to see in a leader that's coming through that's going to survive in this industry?
you've got to be a really good communicator, and communicating doesn't mean talking so much as it does mean listening and understanding other people's perspectives. Um, because you've got to convince people of what's the right thing to do and when to do it, and um, organize people with your thoughts and your words rather than being the biggest and the loudest on the site and everybody just doing what that person says do. So you got to be able to convince people that what you want them to do is the right thing to do, for the whole project. So communication is a must, and I worry about that with the generation that's growing up with phones in their hands all the time and texting. And I mean, there's definitely uses for that in construction, and texting is a great way to get information out. But sitting down and having a conversation with someone is an art that we don't need to lose.
I think it's funny that you've got somebody in your position saying that. I've had somebody on the podcast who was coming from a consultancy background. I've had people that run in smaller contractors. It's a fundamental thing that we hear of communication being something that's key, and I feel that it's being lost, isn't it, with technological changes. And something I spoke to somebody else on another podcast. I was saying that I don't want to kind of bash the younger generation, is Generation Z, and whatever the next generation is coming behind that, is that there's basically a lack of communication, but there's also a lack of resilience. So because they're always seeing things that are, they'll go on Instagram and they'll get likes, they'll go on Tinder and all these other kind of social dating apps and whatever, and they'll get swiped of, oh yeah, this girl thinks you're attractive, or this guy thinks you're attractive. And so there's never ever that kind of dislike button, or that person thought you were ugly, right? So as they're kind of growing up, they don't never have that level of kind of resilience built into them, because they're never getting that knockback as such. So that, I think that really feeds into the lack of being able to communicate, because you can't empathize with somebody, because you're kind of always in that superior kind of, I don't want to say a God complex, but you're always in that kind of superior thing that the way you do it is right and everybody should listen to you. Have you seen that kind of with the younger generation, that kind of issue, and you kind of touched on it? Do you think that's going to be a really big problem in the future for construction?
I hope it's not, but it's something that I worry about, because I don't have any children of my own. My wife and I don't, but we have 10 nieces and nephews between the two of us. And, the, they are definitely in their phones and don't talk much, or playing computer games, and, locked up in their rooms, and they're not out, um, you know, playing and learning how to get along with other people in person. And construction is definitely something that you have to be able to get along with other people and to be able to do it.
You get chewed up and spat out pretty quickly, if not, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you've obviously been through many different cycles with Rodgers, right? And what would you say is kind of one decision or pivot that you've made, a defining difference to the company's direction?
There's couple of things come to mind. The first one was we were known in the early days as a really, really good builder, but our pre-construction services and our ability to forecast what a project was going to cost in the very early stages of design, we weren't the best at doing that. And we put a real focus on pre-construction services and brought in a leader that really helped us develop processes internally to make our pricing more reliable. And now we're known for that. So that was a big thing. When that happened, we grew exponentially after we did that. The other thing is BIM, building information modeling. We were one of the first general contractors in our area to invest heavily in that and actually have a BIM department. And we started doing 3D drawings for our trade partners that didn't have those capabilities to help them coordinate their work. And everybody else was even when we first started doing that, I thought, why are we doing this? What's the benefit of this? But it didn't take long to figure it out how much better it made us in being able to build things once in the field rather than build it over and over and over again because we didn't think through things. So we built it in the computer first, then we built it in the field. And that's made a tremendous difference.
Yeah, and I can imagine that BIM's something that has, I would suggest it's certainly drastically changed the construction industry globally. I think it's, like you say, being able to kind of build something out that you're going to see to replicate in real life is, gives you that chance to engage with it and see what kind of mistakes and issues that you're going to face beforehand. And that's, it's fundamental, I think, getting involved with your trade partners, right? And ensuring that you are effectively trying to help them do their jobs, because effectively they are the people on site that actually do the work, right? And
if they're not making money, we're not going to make money.
Exactly. Happy wife, happy life, as they say. You've got to keep the relationships with people. It's something that the research kind of threw up when we was looking into your background. You serve on a number of community boards, right? From children's rights all the way through to historic preservation. How's your service outside of work kind of informed your leadership within Rodgers? Because I can imagine they're quite intertwined.
It's helped me understand how other industries work. When you serve on not-for-profit boards, there's people from all different industries that are other board members, and you get to know them and understand their perspective. If you spend all of your time around the same people all the time, you start to think in one way, and this just helps me understand other people's point of view. It also allows me to see how other people run their businesses. And there's always something you can learn from other people's experiences. So, and just having a better understanding of the community, that we work in, and understanding what the community needs. A big part of our culture is giving back to the community, and that's probably the most important lesson that I learned in working with Pat and BD Rodgers for so many years, was to give back to the community and get involved in the community.
I mean, it's a great way to look at on life, because I think a life of service is a life well lived, right? I think it's probably something that we've, as a generation to getting younger, we probably don't do enough of, I think, is to look at. And I actually spoke to somebody on a podcast previously that, that whole mantra about service and ensuring that, what you're doing is waking up every day and thinking to yourself, who am I going to serve? I guess it's that kind of outlook, right? And I think that's a great way to look at it, specifically in what you do, and clearly that comes across in both your professional and your personal lives. That whole kind of healthcare drive is clear, because that's, it's a community building at the end of the day. It's one that most people probably don't want to go in, but one that we all need, right?
That's right. Yeah. If you're not, I read this quote, and I can't remember who said it, but if you're not providing a service, you're just taking up space.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's a tattoo I'm going to get on my arm. I think because it's fundamental. I think it's fundamental for human existence, for us to kind of, serve each other, and ultimately looking at the way the world's shaped up at the moment. I think we can all probably learn a little bit about that, to be fair. What a question I was going to have for you, Steve. What kind of advice would you give to younger professionals who want to make an impact in construction, or in fact in kind of how things are being built to serve the community?
I think it's you get back what you give. So, it was that way in school. It's that way in life. It's whatever effort you want to put into it. The more effort you put into it, you're going to get even more back out of it. It's not, you can't just sit back and think you're going to absorb the knowledge. You got to get involved, and I said, show up earlier. You got to show up and get involved. And if you do, you're going to learn. You're going to learn really, really fast. I think I said this earlier too. It's not an easy business at all, but it can be extremely satisfying. To the sense of accomplishment that you have working on a construction project, and you know what it looks like the morning you got there, and it looks different when you leave, and you've done something that's progressed the project through the day. And then, there's many projects that I was so happy they were finished, and ready to go on to something else. But I'll never forget the feeling that I had when we have the grand opening or the open house for the community, to be there that day and see everybody's faces when they walk in and see the facility for the first time, and know that they're thankful that facility's there to take care of them.
That kind of real sense of pride, right?
Yeah, you can't beat it. Can't beat it.
And I can imagine, and I've said this to a few different people. I mean, I've been in and around construction pretty much my whole life, whether it's from the maintenance side and facilities maintenance to decorating and whatever. And my dad runs a small construction company here. But I'll decorate a room, right? We're kind of doing a refurb on our house that we bought a year ago, and I've been going through different parts downstairs, etc. And I'll look at a room after I've decorated, new panels, new lighting, everything else, and I'll feel that real sense of achievement. And I can imagine when you look at a hospital that you've built, that's a major project that's actually going to have make a fundamental difference to people's lives. I can imagine that sense of pride can probably be quite overwhelming, right?
Hmm. Oh yeah. But it's just, it makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
It makes all the effort you put into it worth it.
And looking back at the kind of 4 decades, of working specifically, in construction, slightly more than that, what would you want your legacy to be when you decide to kind of hang up your boots and say, look, I'm done and dusted? What would you want your legacy to be?
I want everybody that I worked with to know that, no matter how difficult situations we've been through, and how many probably heated discussions we've had about things, that I truly do care about them, and that, at different times in my career, I have been, hard on people, I guess, because I care about them and I want them to do well. And so I'm tend to be blunt and say what I think, but I love every one of them, and I'm thankful for the time that I've had with them all, and so I want them to know that I genuinely care about them and want them to be successful and enjoy the industry as much as I do. And I want the clients that I work for to remember me as somebody who always did what we said we were going to do and made their project successful, and put the project first over anything else.
Well, it sounds to me like you are very much a man of principle in everything that you do, whether that's a man of your word. You say you're going to do something, but in principle that you look out for people, you care for people's, your people around you, even when they maybe can't see the wood through the trees. Yeah, I think, look, what more can a man ask for in his legacy?
Yeah.
Look, in closing, Steve, we always ask the same question to everybody, because it's one I always like to kind of leave on. If you had a magic wand and you could change or fix one thing about the construction industry today that would have the greatest impact, what would it be?
The thing about the industry that has frustrated me through the years is how clients have us compete for work. When for the most part, architectural firms, they don't always necessarily compete on fees. It's more on the team and the team's ability. For contractors, we compete and it's for the teams, but there's the fee component of it, I think, gets weighted way too much, and it forces, all of us and our competition to basically play games in the RFP process that we go through to compete for a project. And we all have to make about the same amount of percentage fee on a job for us to keep the lights on in our buildings, and provide the benefits and things that we need to provide for our employees. So I wish we didn't, and it's a small percentage of the overall cost of a project, but it gets heavily weighted, and there's been so many projects we've competed for that I was 100% convinced that we had the best project team and they would have built the best project for that client, that we didn't win the job because our fee was a 0.25% higher than somebody else's. In what was shown in the competition, they're getting it someplace else. They just outsmarted us that time where they put their fees. So if I could change that, I would definitely do that. The other thing is that I would really like to see not so much emphasis be placed on our young people as they're growing up to think that their only pathway to success is a 4-year degree at a university. There's a good living to be made in the trades, in construction. There's a need for it, and I would like to see us be able to figure out how to make construction sexy again and make people want to come to this industry.
It needs it. It desperately needs it, especially when you think to yourself, and I hear the words scam. And look, I've never taken a degree. I did a degree in the UK, but not in the US. The astronomical fees that these young people are paying to colleges, universities, is incredible. It's incredible. You're talking like 50, 60,000 to some of them. If you're doing like an architectural, you're probably talking a couple of $100,000. Or if you're becoming a doctor, a couple of $100,000. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
And you think to yourself, why can't you? The one beauty with construction that I've seen is that you can earn and learn at the same time. And there's not many industries that allow you to do that.
That's exactly right.
My business partner's young boy is a quantity surveyor in the UK, which is kind of soaked up in your project managers in the US, is what they kind of do on the value, the variations, etc., and stuff on the project. But he did that. He did a kind of university course whilst working for a contractor for 5 years, and he kind of spread his course over, but whilst earning a trade. And I think that allows you then to have the theoretical and the practical all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Food for thought, right? Food for thought. We'll see what we can do to change the industry. Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot, and I'd love to potentially maybe pick this conversation up again in a couple of seasons' time when we're rocking and rolling.
Sounds good. I'd be happy to. I've enjoyed it as well.
Steve, I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on.
Glad to. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.